virtual planners gatherings, Oakland County. Today's topic is drones, practical applications for planners. Technical difficulties here. So before we get started, just a few reminders. The meeting is being recorded. So if you would, please mute your audio and turn your camera off. And we ask that you ask any questions. If you type them into the chat box, we'll monitor those, and Jim Schaefer on staff will be facilitating the question and answers after all of the presenters have a chance to present. So today's discussion, we're going to be talking about how drones can assist planners in a wide array of field surveys. And we're also going to be talking about practical advantages and limitations of using drones for surveying and historic preservation activities. We'll talk about some recent drone applications that we've held here at Oakland County, and we'll open up to questions. So sorry about that. So today we have Tyler McMillin, Director of Reality Capture of NOAR Technologies out of Clawson. We also have Bob Fraus, member of Nowak and Fraus engineers in Pontiac, and Ron Campbell, Principal Planner here at Oakland County. So without further ado, here's Tyler. Thank you. Let me stop.
All right, thank you, Ryan. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Like Ryan said, my name is Tyler McMillin. I'm the Reality Capture Director at NOAR Technologies based in Clawson, Michigan. Civil engineer by degree. I've been a licensed drone pilot since 2016, getting my license really the first month that the FAA offered it. And since then, I've been doing FAA Part 107 training and support for hundreds of companies. For those of you who aren't aware, NOAR Technologies is a technology firm that offers sales, rentals, consulting, training, and support. We focus on DJI enterprise drones and Leica Geosystems terrestrial laser scanners, as well as all of the software that is utilized with those, right? So with that, we're going to be talking about UASs today. If anybody doesn't know the definition, a UAS is an unmanned aerial system, just weighing between 0.55 and 55 pounds. UAS, UAV, drone, all of those words are kind of interchangeable. They all mean the same thing, right? So currently there are over 865,000 registered drones in the US, and they are being utilized by 280,000 pilots in command. So that is the licensed pilots. We're really using these drones in a variety of industries, including construction, surveying, electrical, things like inspection, and then things like law enforcement for search and rescue, and just environmental monitoring. So I'm going to be talking about using drones for surveying and site development. A little bit about using drones for these purposes. Typically, this involves an automated mapping process. So the video you see on your screen here is just a simple example. Essentially, if you have a construction site or a site that you need captured, we just window the area on our controller, tell the drone how high we want to fly, and then the software takes care of everything else. So it flies this automatic path, taking photos throughout the whole time, and that then gets processed into something usable for our surveyors or for our engineers and design team, right? So once the map has been flown, we're just left with hundreds and hundreds of raw images. So we need to convert those images into something usable, and we can use a variety of software. The one I'm showing here is called Pix4D. And essentially, we're dropping in all of the photos, and then we let the software run a photogrammetry process. This process involves matching the photos between each other and producing millions of points. We can geo-reference these models using either ground control points, GCPs, or some of the drones I'll be showing do have RTK capabilities, which is real-time kinematics. And what we're seeing here is actually entering in the survey coordinates for these photos. So we just have markers out or targets. We mark the center of the target, and that geo-references the entire model. Once processed, we end up with a large kind of point cloud. So a point cloud is going to be just millions of points with an XYZ coordinate. And then just like a traditional survey, any point that is visible, we can get the XYZ coordinate and bring that into programs like AutoCAD or Civil 3D and use those for drafting and design purposes, right? So the simplest deliverable that we kind of work with is the point cloud and the aerial ortho image. And that's just capturing, the initial site development and site conditions, right? The beauty of drones is that we can capture these very, very large areas very quickly and use these for things like your historical preservation or just simple site and design planning. A simpler deliverable is a geolocated ortho image. So what you're seeing here is just a 2D aerial image, much like Google Earth. But if you've ever taken a look at Google Earth, I know a lot of engineers will use it as references. You might notice it's a little bit out of date, right? So capturing these sites with the drone photos allows us to have an updated image that we can then use for things like an Alta survey or just site development. We can also use these drones for capturing the site conditions before and after any construction. So we know if anything was disturbed or how things have kind of been moved and changed over the lifespan of the project, right? In addition to just our normal ortho image, we can also do things like take a LiDAR laser scanner, fly over areas that are heavily wooded or heavily covered with vegetation. And then we can then take out things like the vegetation and the tree coverage to create an existing ground surface. So for construction planning or surveying, getting your existing ground is really the first kind of step for the project. And with the LiDAR systems, we're able to cut through things like heavily wooded areas or vegetation. So traditionally surveying a site like this is down in Cleveland. They're developing this wooded area. The surveyors on the call will know that surveying in the woods takes quite a bit of time and is not the easiest thing in the world. And we can do this with our LiDAR drones in a matter of minutes, right? So these mapping flights tend to take about a half hour. The largest site I've ever done is about 1,200 acres, and that took roughly 6 hours of flying. So we're covering very, very large areas very quickly, right? Now, the drones that we are using for these, like I said, NOAR Technologies is a DJI enterprise dealer, meaning we focus primarily on DJI drones. There is a kind of a few different entry levels for these drones. The basic one that I want to take a look at is the Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced. So the beauty of this drone is that it packs a ton of power in a very small package. So this drone actually folds up to about the size of a bottle of pop, can fit in the palm of your hand, but is capable of quite a bit. So this does have a thermal camera on it for things like thermal inspection or heat loss for buildings. Local police are using these for search and rescue missions, and just our basic photogrammetry process as well. So this is the smallest drone that I really work with. Has full 360 clash avoidance, so it's very, very difficult to actually have a collision with this. It does sense all the obstructions around it, and then has a variety of attachments that we can add on for various uses, right? So this one comes in around $6,500, and again is the smallest one that we offer. For site development, we recommend looking at the Phantom 4 RTK. So this is a 20 megapixel drone that only takes photos used for area mapping. So this is the drone that is kind of purposely built for surveyors and designers, right? So flying this, we can connect up to the MDOT CORS network, the continuously operating reference stations. And what that allows us to do is get RTK corrections. The RTK corrections give the accuracy of the drone and increase that accuracy down to about a 1 or 2 centimeters. For reference, a standard drone is no more accurate than, say, the GPS in your cell phone. So it gets you close, but it's around 30 feet either way. The RTK module allows us to have these very, very accurate models without using these ground control points, right? This drone comes in at around $6,200 and flies for about 30 minutes. And then the last drone I want to take a look at is the M300 RTK. This is the newest DJI Enterprise drone, and it's kind of the Swiss Army knife of drones. You can add and remove attachments based on what your work is required. So things like inspection, mapping, LiDAR, thermal, that search and rescue, and environmental monitoring. There are payloads for all of that. So this has removable downward gimbals. So we can do things like swap out a LiDAR sensor with a high resolution zoom camera for things like inspection. If you're doing things like insurance monitoring or getting the existing conditions of historical buildings. The zoom camera capabilities means that we don't have to put the building or drone at risk, right? The camera has about 28 times optical zoom, so zero distortion. It's not like the old 2000s cameras where you zoom in and it gets a little distorted. Zero distortion, and then we can swap out our payloads based on what we're doing. So there are third-party payloads available as well for things like environmental monitoring, monitoring air conditions or water samples, and things of that nature. This is also the drone that's kind of best suited for Michigan weather. It's IP rated 45 and can fly in temperatures up to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. And the IP rating means that rain, snow, it does not matter. The drone's going to fly without issue. It also has the longest flight time at 55 minutes, meaning we can capture larger sites faster. This drone comes in around 13,000. That's not including all the extra payloads and cameras. So this one can get quite expensive, but all these other payload options means that this drone is able to grow with the company, and companies are able to offer a lot more services than one of the smaller drones like the Phantom or the Mavic, right? So with that, like I said, drones are being used throughout the country for a multitude of industries and are incredibly easy to use once properly trained. We here at NOAR Technologies, myself being the primary trainer, can get everyone trained and ready to fly their job sites. If anybody would like to see some of the sample data, I can share that after the meeting here. I can send out some links to aerial ortho images for things like the site development or the 3D models for the point clouds. And my contact information is there, just tyler@nortech.com, or you can call our office anytime for more information. So with that, kick it over to, I believe Bob is next.
No, it's probably.
There you go.
Yep, there you go.
Is it? Okay, good. All right, yeah, I really sorry about that. I don't know what happened to my Zoom screen. Anyway, I'm Robert Fraus. I'm with Nowak and Fraus Engineering. I'm sure many of you in the construction side of things and inspection side of things are pretty familiar with our firm. We've been around for over 50 years. And our primary business is civil engineering, planning, as well as land surveying. We got involved with drones probably about 7 years ago. And we use it, mostly what we use it for are to supplement our surveying with aerial photographs, which you know, helps our crews, you know, develop survey drawings and stuff like that. And it also cuts down on survey time. And you saw some brief examples that that Tyler showed you earlier, and we do use a lot for that just to save on time. This is the drone we use. It's called an Inspire 2. It's one of the older versions. I would say this is, I'm guessing, about 2-3-year-old model. We purchased a drone. We thought it was, for our use, the most cost-effective drone model is, and it's strictly, we use it for orthomosaic aerial images. We have used it for some limited topo things like calculating soil piles, but I can show you that in a little bit. I did put together some examples for you. This is an area we flew for the Detroit Yacht Club just this year. And this is an example of an individual photo of part of the area we did for the Detroit Yacht Club. This is just an example of an angle view of the site. Another overhead view. And what you're looking at right now is an orthomosaic image. So when you see a little photo like this, what the drone is actually doing, it's taking on this site probably a couple hundred individual photos like you see right here. And then there's software that we use that stitches all these individual photographs to come up with this orthomosaic image. And Tyler was right on the money about accuracy. On this particular site, we used control points that are tied in with GPS with our survey crew. And what we do is we stitch these photos together with use of the control with real easy to use software. And we found the accuracy is less than an inch when using these control points. I mean, it's extremely accurate. So this drawing or this area we see is to scale. The next site we did for Oakland County in Ron, this is the Holly Hotel fire. We volunteered our services to do some after photos of the hotel. And I'll just pan through these. And the thought was, and Ron can tell you more on this, but the thought was here to assist with the fire chief to examine areas of the hotel, the aftermath. And of course, the second story of this hotel was not accessible to people. And that was another point why we flew it. And there you go, there's some still images of the aftermath. And unfortunately in PowerPoint, I can't really zoom in, but if you do look at the original photos, you can zoom in on the boards and the bricks and all that. So you could really use, they're very detailed photos that you can use for inspection. The next property we did was for the historical Department of Oakland County for Ron. He asked us to fly the 28 North Saginaw, which I believe is the Oakland Center, Oakland Town Center building. And what we did, we did photographs of the entire building for the purpose of inspecting the brick and the windows and whatnot. And I'll go through a few of these photos for you. And I do have some additional photos that I'll try to share with you that hopefully will show you more of the detail of this building. And this is kind of concludes my PowerPoint presentation, but I'm going to get out of here and share with you these images. Now, can you guys see this image?
No, we still see the Windows Explorer. Is it pulling it up on a different screen maybe?
Okay, yeah, I wonder why.
Can you pull it over maybe to,
Oh, here we go.
There you go, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so this is exactly what we issued to the Detroit Yacht Club. This is a PDF. Again, I'm not sure how to add this into a PowerPoint video, so I'm an amateur, so I apologize for this. But what you're looking at is the actual PDF drawing. And this is obviously the area I showed you, the orthomosaic area that I showed you earlier. And when we develop PDFs, we have a layer system. And what I'll do is I can turn off the image where, and what you see here is the drawing that we issued to the Detroit Yacht Club based on the survey control as well as the area. And again, I know Tyler talked about this, but the Detroit Yacht Club, I would say we spent, flight time was probably 15 to 20 minutes max. Setting the control points was probably about 20 minutes. And so in really in under an hour, we were able to develop a very, we were able to collect the field data in under an hour in order to develop this drawing that you're looking at, which normally a normal field crew, I would say, would probably be, could be 2 to 3 days worth of work. And I hopefully this is, oops. Are you able to see this video?
No, we're still seeing it on the screen. Can you pull it over to?
Yeah, I don't know why it won't flow over. Yeah, that's on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I don't know. I know you can probably see the little video on my screen here. I'm not sure when I click on this box, it goes to my other screen and I'm not able to share it. How's this, guys?
There you go.
There we go.
Okay. Anyway, this is the Holly Hotel video that we shot instead of the still images. As just a quick video, but hopefully your screens can show the detail that we're getting with the drone, just with a video. Are you able to see this video, guys?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is the Oakland Town Center building. And this was for your external inspection of the building. And I'll just pause it here. Again, we flew a video and you can actually pause and take screenshots. And hopefully you guys can see it on your end, but you can kind of see the detail of the building and the windows. And it's very useful for inspections if there's cracks or window repairs. It's a really very good tool for a quick inspection of any building, especially these older sites. And getting up towards the top, you can kind of see the deterioration of the building, which, you know, before drones, you would have to use scaffolding or window washing platforms, you know, to get an idea of what's going on with your building. The next thing I wanted to show everybody Are you able to see this PDF?
Yes.
Thank you. This is we've used the drone along with software to do calculations of soil piles. In this circumstance, this is in Pontiac. The client wanted the volume of the soil piles so they knew how many trucks they needed to remove it. And we use the drone along with software to calculate the areas of these piles. And underneath, you can see the image here, obviously. And from this image, it developed into what's called a point cloud. And we use the point cloud to acquire the contours that you see in this image right here. And of course, once you provide, you can calculate based on the contours, the volume of these piles, which is down in this summary below. And here's another one. This is another soil pile calculation. This one's in the city of Detroit. And you can see the image. Take that off. There's our topo. So this drawing is 100% developed just from the aerial image of this drone. And that would conclude my presentation. On to you, Ron.
Thanks, Bob.
We can see it, Ron. Just need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I have to apologize. When Ryan and Jim first approached me, they were asking me if I'd participate in a presentation on drones, and being dyslexic, I took it as being, could I drone on? And so I've prepared about a 3-hour presentation here. I'm going to try to cut it down. We're going to start picking up where Bob left off. And this is at the Pontiac State Bank building. It was built in 1929. And it literally came on the eve, it opened on the eve of the Great Crash Depression era in 1929. It's gone through a series of owners through the years, constantly changing. And it was, I believe, designed by Smith Henchman. Don't hold me to that. But for many years, I've got to go to my next slide. For many years, people thought all the decoration that we have on this building was Egyptian. And while it has a theme of Egyptian, it is really on the Native Americans and Chief Pontiac, of course, after it's built. The first floor and up to the second floor is 15 stories, including the penthouse. Up to the second floor, it's marble and terracotta. Then the column of the building goes to masonry, brick construction. And then at the Capitol, the very top, it goes to terracotta again. That's where you have a lot of the decorative elements. In 2008, the owner of the building went to Michigan Historic Preservation Network, and they asked if they'd be willing to receive a donation. Would they take the facade of the building in easement? And after studying it, the MHPN said, yes, we will. And what this gave the owner was a tax credit. Think of the facade as being a work of art that you would have, and you would donate it to the local museum or nonprofit for them to display, and you would get a credit for it. Same thing with this. This was a facade easement. I think MHPN holds about 20 of them across the state, this being the only one in Pontiac. And what we do every year since 2009, we report on it. We evaluate, go out, evaluate the building, and then compile a report for MHPN, who in turn shares it with the owner. The report kind of concentrates on elements that are creeping up, little changes, minute changes in the building that can become potential problems. I'll share a few of those with you. But it also sometimes, not in every case, but it gives solutions, measures that can be taken to augment and correct the problems. Of course, we could always capture everything at grade level, and we always had access to the roof, which gave us a little more access to the close-ups of some of the terracotta, but it was always from a distance that we had anything that we could do. So we would never get images like this from the street view. And you can see in this middle slide the mortar of the bricks and how that has eroded. Now, this is not unusual, but it kind of gave an indication of, well, what's happening with the rest of the mortar on the bulk of the building. And monitoring over several years, we've been able to track this minute details, as I was mentioning. This happens to be one of the cast columns that door surrounds at the grade. And this was in 2011 on the far left. You can see just a bit of attack. But by 2021, 10 years later, that entire element is totally gone. So a little bit of prevention back in 2011 would have preserved this element, which is now would have to be recreated at hundreds of times more expense to a potential owner or ownership. Here's a beam and a lintel around back. You can see it in 2015 with beginning to show some of the cracking. By 2021, just 6 years later, we're seeing exposed rebar, and that's just going to continue to accelerate. So the drone, and I've never looked at drones before, I never used them, but for example, it's getting us to places that we could never get before. So in this case, this was a ground shot, which was enlarged greatly. But to the right, you'll see that same view, but from above. And so we can see the base of the feet and what's condition, as Bob was saying, a still shot, I can't do it on the screen, but still shot, we could zoom into that and study that pretty clearly. So it does give us unique advantages. As the new owner is converting this and is improving the facade, we shared this with him, and he gets a better idea of the work that's going to be required, as well as the contractors that will be involved. What is the condition of those masonry, the bricks, individual bricks in the mortar, and what is the condition of the terracotta? We can access through the drone much more easier than we could with scaffolding, and I'm certainly not going to repel off the building. Now, it so happens that just a few days prior to this, the fire occurred in Holly, and it was devastating. Holly, this is Battle Alley, historic district in Holly, and you can see some of the shots of the fire as it raged through. I think there were 17 apartments from around the county and outside the county that came to assist. They constantly poured water, and they fought it for over 16 hours and controlled it, thankfully, for primarily 3 buildings. The one building, a total loss, and we immediately got in touch with the State Historic Preservation Office, hoping to use the historic tax credits as each of the owners indicated their willingness and desire to rebuild and maintain a historic character of the Battle Alley. So the slide that you see here, this is the Antiques Arcade. It's a total loss, and we will not be getting any tax credits for that because there's nothing to preserve. The building in the foreground is the Holly Hotel, and you can see how the roof at the far end here was burned and replaced. So the building suffered very little in terms of fire damage. They did have a fire suppression system installed in '78 when the building nearly burned to the ground then. So there was, while there was little fire damage, there was considerable smoke and water damage throughout the rest of the building. That's going to qualify for historic tax credits. The one that was questionable is this building, is Andy's Place. It was a restaurant bar on the first floor and residential on the second floor. Interesting, this wall that you see here, the principal wall on the side, that had a bow to it, and the firefighters, I understand, they were afraid that would collapse. They thought the bow was the result of the fire, and they had high pressure hoses trying to take that wall down to prevent it collapsing. Well, obviously they couldn't take it down. That bow was built into it, not intentionally, but it's been there since it was first constructed. So we got with the SHPO and we said, "But we'd like you to review all this." He said, "Well, okay, send us a little report. If you've got any photographs or anything like that, that will designate where these buildings are in the historic district and the condition of them, that would really help get us off the ground here." So we talked with Bob and he said, "Sure, we can do this. We can demonstrate this." And these are aerial photos that he shot. So on the street on the right, that's trying to think, Broad Street. Andy's Place is right. I can't. I'm not sure that you can see my cursor. No, you can't. Okay. Andy's Place, we'll do some close-ups of this after, but Battle Alley is right there in the center that runs basically a 2-block area intersected by a cross alley. The one building that you see right at the middle of that Battle Alley, that was the building that was totally lost, the Antiques Arcade. Portion of the Holly Hotel that was burned, and then Andy's Place. Here, we were able to use the footage from the drones, both stills and video, and we could get into this building. Now, we were, at this time, it was not allowed to get in there, so we couldn't assess it from the actual ground floor. But there was scaffolding going out when we were testing the walls. They were getting prepared for the structural analysis and the engineer to get in there. So we were able to use these photographs to really get some close-up images of the damage and perhaps where we really need to investigate. So with that information, we prepared a document to send to SHPO. It gave the location, it showed the extent of the damage that was occurring, and they were very pleased with it, and they got right back with us. They said the one building, the arcade, Antiques Arcade, cannot receive the tax credits. The hotel certainly can, and we're still working with them to get Andy's, and it really depends on how much has been destroyed and how much can be preserved. We feel that the front wall, we can preserve all that and restore it. The side wall, we're having to take that down about 4 courses. We're going to reinforce that along there. So we can save at least the 2 principal walls of the building and possibly a 3rd wall, and maybe even the side wall, the back wall, depending on what we find when we actually get into it. The buildings have been based on the drone flights. They got in, they were able to reinforce that 2nd floor. The shot here is from the 1st floor. It shows the extent of damage. The new lumber you see, that's all shoring that's going up so that we could get the weight off of the upper floor. Upper floor, that's had a lot of cleaning and refuse removal. The bracing is in place to hold those walls until we get a roof on it. That's the first priority, is get a roof on it, seal it off before weather sets in. And that kind of concludes my portion, except when I was going through this at the very end, I ran across this. Now, this is not Oakland County. We might have to check that out though, Bob, see if we're running across these. This happens to be in Ireland. It's a farmer's field. And I call it kind of the result of another disaster, the drought that's going on in England, and the drones. And somebody was intrigued by this, and they flew this drone, and lo and behold, they are finding stone circles, just as Stonehenge, in a number of locations throughout Ireland and Scotland that were never known before. And you can very clearly see here where the depressions, those pockets hold water, moisture a little bit more clearly than the outline. So these images stand out now with the drought conditions that are existing there, which we never would have known existed except for the conditions that are present and the use of drones. So with that, who knows where we're going to go with drones. But thank you, Bob, and thank you, Tyler, for sharing this expertise and this experience with me and how we can apply it to historic preservation.
Great, thanks, Ron. So looking at the chat, Jim, do you want to field any questions that you see in the chat?
Sure, thank you. First question, is it possible to have a copy of the Detroit Yacht Club image Bob showed, not the aerial one?
Yeah, I would. It certainly is. I don't. I would have to get a release from them to release the PDF to you. I assume you want a PDF copy or the paper copy.
Okay, so they could offline contact you direct, Bob?
Yeah, I can reach out to them, and you know, I don't think they would have an issue with it. It was just for kind of their use because they were celebrating, I believe it was a 100-year time capsule earlier this year. So they just wanted kind of something I think they wanted to hang on their wall. But I'll certainly reach out. And who is this?
The follow-up PDF would be great. And then it's in the chat, Bob. We can get that information to the village clerk at Ortonville. All right.
Okay.
There's another comment in there. Disappeared. Another comment in there complimenting you, Ron, on your photos. I have a question while we're waiting for others to, I guess, Bob and Tyler. When you shoot those and you're transferring that information so that you can generate the plans, what kind of desk work is necessary to make those plans? I mean, is it literally automatic through the software, or do you have staff time baked in back in the office to pretty up those plans for distribution to your clients?
Tyler, do you want to? I mean, I think Tyler and I can both answer this.
Sure.
Tyler, do you want to tell them about the software, and then I can tell you about man hours?
Sure. So the software side is a lot of hurry up and wait. Once you get the photos and set the project up to process, basically you just hit start and it does it all in the background. The larger the project, the longer it takes to process. As far as turning those images or the point cloud into a deliverable, things like an AutoCAD plan that Bob was showing, there's still quite a bit of desk time and manpower required. There are services available that you can upload your images to, and they'll generate those Alta surveys and things of that nature. So it's really what companies find to be the best fit as far as cost and time savings. So they can spend as much time in the office as they want, or they can do as little, but it's quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, that's right. And as far as like man hours, but the way we operate right now, when we fly these aerial photographs, we do. Tyler kind of gave you a quick example of what we do. We import the orthomosaic images into AutoCAD, and then we essentially trace the lines in the images. And again, it's less than 1 inch accurate. It's probably less than a ½ inch accuracy that we're finding over the past 7 years of doing this. So essentially, we bring it into AutoCAD. We use control so it's accurate, and then we just trace the lines in AutoCAD. So it's a little bit traditionally, in the newer age of surveying, when surveyors go out and shoot a site, with the rod and instrument that you typically see, they're actually generating line work in the field. And then when they bring it back in the office, you get maybe a good guess, it's maybe you get 50% of your drawing kind of already drawn up, which was done by coding from the field crews. So it's a little bit more time consuming as far as office time, because now we're tracing images instead of developing the line work out in the field. But we've been looking at, there are softwares out there with, I call it AI. When you do bring in these point clouds, you need a little bit of work from a CAD operator. From what I've seen, you can click on these point cloud images, and the point cloud image is basically a photograph with points in it, and I call them pixels. And the software will now recognize, for example, hydrants, utility poles, manholes, and it'll automatically put those point symbols in your AutoCAD. It'll put those point symbols in your drawing, which gets imported into AutoCAD. So I guess to answer your question, I think the way the future is going, the less expensive these programs become. And over time, I think they're going to be, the artificial intelligence is going to become so much better that you're literally going to have, you're going to shoot sites with either a car-based LiDAR or a drone-based LiDAR system. And you're going to import that, and the software is literally going to probably draw 80 to 90% of your drawing with very little human interaction. That's kind of the way I see the software going.
All right, excellent, thank you. Next question is from Robert. What's the up-to-date status on the rebuilding of those 2 buildings in Holly? Ron, you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. I think all 3 buildings that were most affected by the fire are going to be rebuilt. The Holly Hotel, certainly, they're anxious to get back online. Well, as I say, all 3 of them are going to be rebuilt. Right now, the process, we're waiting for the insurance reports, the adjusters getting together, I guess, estimate of what the response will be. We're proceeding now with getting the roof on Andy's place, and we're working with the owner of the Antique Arcade just to get a layout. It actually gives all 3 buildings opportunity for barrier-free assistance or access, which they didn't have before. And this will be a big step in improving accessibility for each of the businesses. So it's kind of a wait and hurry process right now. We have contractors that we're working with on the Andy's place. I'm not sure if the contractors have been selected for the Antique Arcade or the hotel, but we're working with both those owners as well. So I hope that answers it.
Great. Next question for Tyler. Are you required to get FAA clearance every time you fly?
Unmute there.
There you go.
No, it really is based on the location. So the FAA has come out with a system called the LANC system, LAANC, where basically, if you're flying near an airport, most of the country has this kind of grid over the airport where you can get instant approval to fly up to certain elevations. As I zoom out, anywhere in Michigan that doesn't have one of these blue circles, that is unrestricted airspace. You do not need to get FAA permission to fly. So it's really only around airports that we have to get that FAA approval. So it's become significantly more streamlined. It used to be a 90-day process to apply for permission. Now it's just an app on your phone. You just window your area and you get instant approval to fly.
Excellent. Okay.
Hey,
Thank you.
Tyler, I want to
Yes.
add to that. And I don't know if you know this, but the FAA actually does submit that to the control towers.
Yep.
We had a site we were flying near the Flint airport, and the tower actually called me on my cell phone and wanted
Yep,
to
it goes
verify what we were
to,
doing. So I was actually surprised because I thought it was just an automated system to track people, but it is actually real time, and I was surprised.
yeah, it goes to air traffic control, and they approve
Right.
or deny it based on what you're doing and where you're flying. So you have to
Okay.
enter in your pilot license information and all of that.
Excellent. Thank you. We do have a hand up. Is that a mistake, or is that somebody wants to ask a question?
Lois?
Lois Ann?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know I was online. Anyway, I have just an observation and maybe a suggestion. The reason for my visit today, thank you, Kristen Wilfang, you rock as always, is economic development and events promotion is so important to Michigan's overall financial health. So I inquired about drone flyovers to show the success of events. For example, next month, Oakland County plans to revive after COVID shutdown, the Oakland County Irish Fest. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to show up, and a nice flyover would confirm to sponsors and donors that yes, we're still alive. So that's my suggestion. That should be maybe something on your list of for everybody to consider. But also, as I'm a senior and I'm a volunteer, long-term preservationist of like everything, I appreciate the prices on the drones, but what about the cost of the license and training? What would that be? Because don't want to invest too much as a volunteer, a senior on a fixed income, but
Yeah, that's Tyler.
So your FAA license is based on where you go to take the test. It averages about $175 to get the actual license.
okay.
As far as training, that really depends on what you're trying to do. If you just need to learn how to fly the drone, that would be significantly cheaper than learning how to process it all into an engineering drawing. But if you want to reach out to our office here, we can get you pricing on everything.
Okay, I will. I'll get back to Kristen and who can maybe forward it on to the appropriate party. Thank you. I love the presentation and and the questions were very helpful.
I want to add one thing to your question. Your first question was about the Irish Fest.
Yes.
So and I know they just kind of changed the rules, I think, earlier this year, last year, but the FAA restricts flying drones over people. And I know they made some adjustments to that. I haven't read up about it, but I am here in the next month or two. I don't know if Tyler, if you can answer that, if they have a little bit of leeway flying over people, but I know at least the original rules, you cannot fly drone over like a
Yep.
crowd of people. And I think that still applies.
That still does apply. So what they've
Yeah.
done is categorize the drones based on the weight of them and the potential damage for if they were to fall down, fall out of the sky. So a flyover you could do if you had a designated flight path that you kind of kept pedestrians off of, but legally we're not allowed to fly over unprotected civilians.
that makes complete sense. Safety first.
Yep.
Excellent. We do have another question. This is from David, were all of the aerial photos taken with the DJI Latrice?
Yeah, I showed you the photo. We use the Inspire 2. We have 3 of them. And all the photos that we do and what you saw in the presentation were with the Inspire 2.
Okay, excellent. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. We are right at 11 o'clock. So unless there's any last minute questions, Ryan, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, so I'm not seeing any other hands raised or any other questions either. So I want to thank all of our speakers, Bob, Tyler, Ron. Thank you so much for your informative presentations. And everyone in the audience, we look forward to seeing you at our next virtual planners gathering. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.